Hey, recording's in progress. All right. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to be with all of you and offer you some service. And let us get right into it. Yes, when you can, please put on your camera. We will use the chat feature often, so please do that. And I will ask someone here to monitor it because, especially for questions, because when I'm showing my slides, sometimes it's harder for me to do both. So, Aravind, Dr. Boy, are you going to be here the whole time?
Yes, Prabhuji, but Bhanumati Lakshmi Mataji is the course coordinator,
Okay,
so
so
she will be.
she'll monitor the
Yeah,
chat. Okay.
Bhanumati Lakshmi Mataji, please look into the chats and inform Prabhuji whenever the things are there. So she'll be coordinating for the course, Prabhuji.
Okay. And do your best to stay awake. That's a good one also. All right. So let us begin. Um, okay. How to deal with conflicts and other challenges. So I have a question for you. Oh, well, I thought I'd just a little introduction to myself and also just showing you the results of Kala or the time factor. So this in red, that's me in 1976 when pulling Srila Prabhupada's cart in New York for the first Ratha Yatra in New York. So that was me. I was 16 years old then. Uh, and then I was a brahmachari. You can tell I was a brahmachari because my shoelaces are untied. And but that's 50 years later. So this is 76 and 2026. So that's the age factor in real life. So as Prabhuji was saying, I just a little bit about me. I also worked on a project for the Supreme Court of India for many years, training the judges and the senior advocates. So this is me speaking at a program in Delhi with Justice Chandrachud, who at that time was the Chief Justice of India. And I also am a consultant for NASA, and because NASA has a lot of conflicts, more conflicts than ISKCON, if you can believe it. And so I also am a consultant for them. So I do things in the outside world and, of course, in ISKCON. Okay, so put in the chat what word comes to your mind when you hear the word conflict. Just one word, put it in the chat. What comes to your mind when you hear the word conflict? And I'll look at the chat here. What word comes to your mind right away when you hear the different opinion? Chaos. Okay, Ghaziabad said chaos. Tension. The world. All right. Offenses. No adjustments. Ego clashes. Not on the same page. Ego issues. Ego. We got a lot of votes for ego. Problem. Don't agree with others. Two different opinions. Maya attacks. Ego. Okay. Any more? That's a good list there. Um, Misunderstandings. And as you can see, they tend to be kind of negative naturally. But we'll hope by the end of this, we'll see that although conflict is all of these things that you said, if we can find a good way to work out our conflicts, then relationships can actually improve greatly by the end of the conflict. And so that it's not a bad sign that there's conflicts in an organization like ISKCON. If there weren't any conflicts, that would probably mean that we've all given up hope, we don't care anymore, and that would be sometimes a bad sign. The sign of a really good organization is that they learn how to deal with conflicts. And so as much as I'm sure you think, wow, there's so many conflicts in ISKCON. Um, we have what's considered so far, at least in all the religions of the world, the best system for dealing with conflicts. Now, I know you might laugh at that, but I get hired by Christian groups, by Jewish groups, by other Hindu groups to train them in how to have a system like we have. And we'll talk about that system a little bit later. So it's still obviously in its beginning stages because we still have a lot of conflicts in ISKCON, but at least we have a system in place. Okay, so thank you for those conflicts. All right, so Krishna was not a successful mediator, right? By his mercy, of course. He was not. There's Dhritarashtra on the left, and it didn't work out between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, as we know. But it's really important for any healthy spiritual organization that our internal culture, how we deal with each other, how we is similar, is connected, is aligned with our preaching culture. We can't say one thing and do something else. And Prabhupada talked about this, that you have dedicated your life for Krishna, and therefore you should be ideal. We are introducing Krishna consciousness movement for the harmony and goodwill of humanity. But if you yourselves are suffering from the very ills we're trying to remove, how can the people be influenced favorably? Stop this fighting, tolerate. I love that last sentence. Stop this fighting, tolerate. So Prabhupada really, anyway, you can see here. So it's so important that we can't, quote, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, and then on one hand, and Gatvamam Shantim Richati, that this is the peace formula. And then when we go back to the temple, we're fighting with each other. We should be, what we preach should, our achar should match our prachar. Make sense? So, what are the costs and consequences of conflict if there are conflicts in youth preaching or in ISKCON? So, maybe either you can put in the chat or go off of mute, but what are some of the consequences or the costs if in youth preaching we're fighting, or in general in ISKCON we're fighting? What is the result of that? What do you think? And feel free to go off of mute and say it. In lack of trust amongst new youths, yeah, devotees get disconnected. Okay. Yes, somebody had their hand up for a second. No progress of preaching. What else? Separate organizations are formed. Yes, expansions of areas. I'm not sure what Kanu Mohan Prabhu, Kanu Mohan Prabhu, you want to go off mute and explain what you mean there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I mean,
Yes.
Prabhuji, that where there's some conflicts in the youth preachers, so generally, what the solution we find that we separate the areas for both of the leaders. So we
Acha.
divide
Okay,
them. We divide the areas. You choose this area. You choose this area. That's all.
yes. Right. Makes sense. Thank you. There may be anti-preaching. Will lose its authenticity. Wow, Sadhu Jivan Prabhu. Anti-preaching, no spiritual upliftment, communication gap or less open communication, demotivation in preaching, and lost Sangha Shakti. Wow. Thank you, Vikram. So we can see that we really don't want to have a lot of conflicts in our youth preaching activities, because all of these negative things happen. Right? We split up into different we work against each other. And this is a good one. I liked what IYF Ghaziabad said, that lack of trust. So if they see senior devotees fighting with each other, they think, oh my God, what's going to happen to me when I become a senior devotee, right? They lose that trust. A matter of fact, I would say that the one thing that increases devotees in ISKCON's faith is when they see senior devotees getting along with each other and having loving exchanges. And there's nothing that hurts junior devotees' faith more than when they see senior devotees fighting with each other. That's my experience over the years. So, yeah, thank you for those comments. Very good. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about, conflict theory, but we will apply it to your services. And tomorrow will be more about practical application, although we'll do some practical application today as well. But it's really important to get a bigger picture of what causes conflicts and how we're going to learn a lot of lessons from Shastra, because the Shastra is not something from thousands of years ago. I mean, it is, but there's so many lessons there for 2026. So many lessons. So let's begin with that. So what causes conflict? And the number one cause of conflict in the world, in ISKCON, in families, and in the Shastra are assumptions that we make that are incorrect. Now, everyone makes assumptions every day. That's natural. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when we get it wrong and we act on it, that can cause a lot of problems. So I'm going to give you a few assumptions that we read about in Shastra and ask you if you have to give some more examples. So, here, the monkey warriors, if you look at their body language there, right, on the left, they assumed that Vibhishan was, not sincere. He was sent by Ravana, right? And so they made an assumption about him based on his birth. He's an Asura. Based on his association, he was associating with Ravana, Kumbhakarna, etc. You don't see it here, but it says in the Ramayana that he was dressed in his, Asura Vesh, right, and more. So you can see Hanuman and Lord Ram, they're not making that negative assumption. Right? Sometimes in the Shastra we see that, and certainly we see this in India, right? People assuming someone to be supreme who isn't. Right? My dear servants, you have accepted me as supreme, Yamaraj says, but factually I am not. And we make false assumptions about ourselves all the time, that we're this body, and Hiranyakashipu assumed that he was immortal. And these are some of the getting into ones that really affect us, as we know the pastime, and Chitraketu wasn't actually making fun of Lord Shiva, but Parvati assumed that he was, and we all know that he was cursed. Of course, this is Krishna's Leela, because he was cursed to become a demon, but a great, great Mahabhagavat devotee demon. But still, for our lesson here, she made an assumption. And of course, Maharaj Parikshit made an assumption that Samik Rishi was faking his samadhi in order to not, welcome him, give him a glass of water, etc., some sweet words, and he garlanded him with a dead snake. And of course, from this assumption, look what happened. Okay, in the positive, of course, the Bhagavatam was spoken, but he was cursed to die in 7 days. His Samik Rishi's son, totally, misread the situation, etc. And there's so many. I'll give it 2 more, but see what others you can think of from the Shastra. When Vishwarup took sannyas, Sachimata assumed that Advaitacharya had persuaded him to do so. Therefore, she accused Advaitacharya of this, which was an offense at his lotus feet. Later, Lord Chaitanya induced his mother to take the dust of Advaitacharya's lotus feet, and thus her Vaishnava aparad was nullified. And one more. In the city when Satyajit's younger brother Prasena did not return from the forest with the jewel, Satyajit became very upset. He did not know that his brother had been killed by a lion, and that the lion had been killed by Janbavan. he thought, or he assumed instead, that because Krishna wanted that jewel, which had not been delivered to him, Krishna might have therefore taken the jewel from Prasenna by force and killed him. This idea grew into a rumor which Satyajit spread in every part of Dwarka. So even without social media, Satyajit was expert at spreading a rumor, even about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, before I ask you that question, what other assumptions can you think of in the Shastra? You can put it in the chat or go off of mute. What are some other assumptions you can think of in the Shastra? There's many of them, but it may take you a minute to think of them. Oh, yes, Anant Sham Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. The assumption made by the Durvasa Muni against Amrish Maharaj when Amrish Maharaj was breaking the Amrish Maharaj took the water for this Durvasa Muni became very angry, thinking
Yeah.
that Durvasa Muni thought that the Amrish Maharaj has done some offense against him. So,
Very
but
good.
that was not the offense.
Yes, very good, very good. Yes, and a number of people said the same thing with you. Banumati Mataji, then Dave Giridhari Prabhu said the sons of Sagar Muni wrongly assumed that Kapil Muni had stolen the sacrificial horse. Okay, Kakei assumed wrong about Dasarath Maharaj coronation of Lord Ram. Very good, IYF. Anant Goranga, a different Anant, four Kumars and Jai Vijay, and then another Vamsi Dhari said the Durvasa Muni again. Brahmaji stole all the friends and cows of Krishna because he assumed, who is this boy? He's eating with his left hand. I mean, he doesn't even know the culture, right? Very good, Ajit. Yug Nayak, Bali assumed Sugriva to be lusty for Raja. Mother Kaikeya, okay, we heard that one again. Very good from Kanu Mohan. Vishwarup Daksha, Prajapati assumed that Lord Shiva had done wrong by not respecting him, right? Yeah. So there's so many. Maharaj Bali assumed that, there's assumed Avatar had small footsteps. Very good one, Ajit. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. Amog offended with Lord Chaitanya. Kalyavam and Munchikunda, Parikshit Maharaj assumed that the Rishi, yes. Raj, wow, there's so many. You see this? We could go on for the whole time. Raghunath Maharaj, yes, and Jadabharata. Our assumption is protection comes only from material circumstances. Yes, so that's about our assumption. Thank you, Sukanya Gopi. I assume that's Devi Dasi. Duryodhana towards Vidura Maharaj. So yeah, so you can see there are so many lessons. You know, the Bhagavad. So this is obviously such an important point. Such an important point. Thank you, Chitraketu Maharaj, etc. Okay, let's continue. So assumptions are the number one cause of conflict. Now, can you think of an assumption that you have made in your that either you have made about some situation in your life or someone has made an assumption about you? Could someone go off of mute and tell us a time when either you made an assumption that was wrong or someone made an assumption about you that was unfair? This is a harder question sometimes than Shastra. Any brave soul willing to tell us? Okay, well, when you do think of something, please go off of mute and or tell us. But I understand it takes some time. Let me ask you a different question. What assumptions do youths in India or in Bharat make about ISKCON devotees? So when you're preaching, what assumptions do you sometimes face when you are trying to spread Krishna consciousness amongst the youth of India or of Bharat? This one you should be able to answer more easily. You can put it in the chat, but I prefer if you go off of mute, but either way. What assumptions do people see when they see one of you in brainwashed? It's a foreign institute. Yes, Banumati Lakshmi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji Pranam. Probably one assumption that I heard from girls that they think that ISKCON doesn't support girls to do job or go outside because we support Vedic culture. So we want them to be a housewife. So this kind of assumption I heard.
Okay, thank you very much. And Rupeshwar Nitai Prabhu. A little louder. It's hard to hear you, Prabhu.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but speak loud. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the assumptions we are also facing that while preaching, they don't understand. They understand that ISKCON is a foreign organization, so they don't listen. See, they completely understand it's a foreign organization.
Acha. Okay, thank you very much. And Vilas Padmanabh Prabhu. I can't hear you, Prabhu, but you're off of mute. Still can't hear you.
Hare Krishna. It's now
Yes.
audible.
Yes.
Really, sometimes youth assume that we are very primitive. We focus on Vedic culture, and that supports being very primitive, low at the standard of living. So sometimes they assume that.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for that. We're very primitive. We're backwards. Yes. Okay. And there's one hand. Sadhu Mati Rohini Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam Prabhuji. Prabhuji, before joining ISKCON, I was having like judgmental mentality. I used to hear things from other and make a judgment about a particular thing. So before joining ISKCON, I do have some assumptions about ISKCON, like they used to brainwash. But gradually, as I started coming and started hearing this philosophy, it really transformed me.
Okay. So brainwashing was the assumption. Very good. Thank you. And we have a few more hands up. Sika Mihiti Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, generally the youth understand that they will make a Baba. There are one assumption that they assume they will make the like a monk. Really, the propaganda of the ISKCON is that.
Okay. All right. So they make a monk, you said, or a Baba. Is that what you said, Prabhu? Just yes. Okay. And Ajit Kumar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Sada Pranam. Am I audible now?
Yes, very.
Yeah. So the family from the students and the young persons usually thought that ISKCON makes something, mix something in prasadam, so that they are making brahmachari or someone holistic person or monk type person. So prasadam is very magical, so don't eat prasadam from ISKCON.
I wish that were true. I would have a big feast 4 times a day. Very good. Thank you. I hadn't heard that one before. And one last one, and then we go move on. Sukanya Gopi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Sadhapranam. So many young people in India have same common assumptions about ISKCON devotees. They may think that devotees are very serious, have given up the normal life cannot enjoy anything. They also think that joining ISKCON means giving up families, career, relationships, and modern life completely. This is
Very
in this assumption.
Thank you. And let's look at the chat. We are brainwashing the youth and making them brahmacharis and sending money outside of India. Yes, I've heard of that. They think ISKCON will make me brahmachari and lose our material ambitions. We'll make these ambitionless. We'll make them ambitionless and useless guys. They think they'll be of no use. Yug Nayak Prabhu. Money transfer temple, escapist, yes, not taking responsibility. One assumption is that ISKCON is against Varnashrama system. ISKCON is like an early East India company. Very interesting, Bhima Arjuna Prabhu. Wow, one assumption I heard about that ISKCON is institute of rich devotee and only rich devotees can survive here. Interesting. They think we're orthodox, stuck in old ways, and we're trying to make them backward and weak. Wow, so many. Only materially educated people can join ISKCON. We are disrespecting demigods. Your career is over, Vikram says. They are just making money by selling books from monks, not India's society. So you have a lot of assumptions to deal with. Vaishnav, Vaishnav Bhaktabhu, quickly tell us yours and then we'll move on.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One assumption that I heard that ISKCON is making people weak. They think that the ISKCON devotees are weak, they cannot fight, they are very humble. So one of my manager in my company, he used to say that your organization is doing very good, but they are making people weak. They are making people very humble so that in case of any situations like war or something, that ISKCON devotees never comes in front, they don't talk, they have very intellectual peoples, but they don't walk, like they don't talk in those situations, so they are very weak,
Very
he
good.
said.
Thank you for that. And Prabhupada dealt with that once, and he said, "Have you not read about Arjuna?" That was his reply. Okay, so it's good to understand. It's good as preachers to know sometimes what we are up against, what assumptions are being made, so that we can deal with them. So let's talk more about how that works. Because when you make a false assumption and you take an action, that can be scary, right? You know, the obvious examples is like Parvati and Maharaj Parikshit. Of course, those examples are Krishna's arrangement, but at the same time, they're there to teach us some valuable lessons. And they can lead to Vaishnava Aparad, right? Lord Chaitanya warned us about the mad elephant offense. And I couldn't find a picture of an elephant in a garden, but if this is what a mad elephant can do to a car, imagine what a mad elephant can do to a garden, right? The garden is completely ruined, so we obviously don't want to commit offenses against other Vaishnavas. And I always like this quote. I don't know if any of you are people, the kind of person that worries a lot, but I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happen. So in other words, you assume the future and you assume that some problem is going to happen and it doesn't actually happen. So we make assumptions a lot. Very quickly, when I worked for NASA, when we travel, we have to rent cars, and we're only allowed to rent economy cars like a Maruti 800 or one of those small Fiats or something like that. But when I flew in very late one night, and the rent-a-car company only had this car, a red Mustang, which is an expensive car, but they had to give it to me at the economy price. So the next day when I went to do the training that I was doing for NASA, people saw the car and they assumed that I paid more money for it and that I was one of those kind of cheaters from Washington, D.C. And so they canceled the training. I was able to explain a little bit later what happened, so the training went on, but they made an assumption just based on the car I drove. So do we make assumptions about people by how they dress, what kind of car they have? In India, especially, we sometimes make assumptions about people's last name, right? Right? If somebody is a Roy, we know where they're from, and an Agarwal, a Patel, a Desai, right? It's and we might have assumptions about Gujaratis if we meet a Patel or like that, or an Agarwal from UP. I think you get the idea. We make assumptions. So this is kind of how assumptions work. If you look at the bottom, we just observe the world like we would like a video camera on our phone, just neutrally. But then we select some data, something that we focus on, like they focused on the car, or Parvati focused on the facial expressions of Chitraketu, or etc. Sachimata focused on her son taking sannyas, right? And we make some assumptions, like, for example, that I paid more for the car, or that Chitraketu was being disrespectful, or that Samak Rishi was being disrespectful, etc. Then we draw a conclusion that, that this person is, that Chitraketu is an offender, that Samak Rishi is disrespectful. We may even adopt beliefs about the world. I'm not saying Parikshit Maharaj did this, but he said, all these sadhus living in ashrams, they're all so useless, etc. And then we take an action sometimes. By the way, I think somebody's not on mute. If you could make sure you're on mute, because we hear some wind or something. So how long do you think it takes to go up this ladder from just observing something to making a conclusion? How long does it take? Hours? Few seconds. Yes, Kanu Mohan. A few seconds at the most. Yes. If I came on today and I had hair down to my shoulder, right, and didn't have tilak on, and you might make an assumption about me. If I had tilak going this way, right, or or I just had like a t-shirt on instead of a kurta, we make assumptions about how people dress, etc. Someone so we make them all the time, and it often takes, yes, David Giridhari, yeah, almost immediately. So it happens all the time. So how to deal with assumptions? Because we're saying that assumptions cause a lot of conflict, and conflicts are one of the things that hurt our preaching the most, and also not only our preaching, but our, when we commit Vaishnava aparad, our sangha, our bhakti lata. And when we're talking about assumptions that are wrong, and we act on them, because like I said, we make a lot of assumptions and many of them are right. But how to deal with them? Well, first, let's remember that we have these 4 defects. We read about them in Ishopanishad, we hear about them in Bhagavatam classes, but isn't it true for most of us that we still really rely on our sense, we don't take a step back and think, I could be making a mistake here. I could be illusioned. I do have imperfect senses, right? So it's good to remember that this is conditioned souls have these 4 defects, and Prabhupada, referred to them on a number of occasions. So just remembering that, so we're not so sure that we're always right. And when we find ourselves making an assumption, be curious. The mantra is be curious, not judgmental. So imagine if Maharaj Parikshit would have sat down and waited and then said to Samak Rishi when he opened his eyes, were you avoiding me? Right? Or imagine if Parvati would have said to Chitraketu, are you making fun of my husband? Right? Instead of acting on it immediately. So being curious instead of judgmental is really powerful. So remembering we have the 4 defects, being curious, not judgmental, and walking down the ladder, and especially looking at that last point. What are some other possible explanations? So, of course, in Maharaj Parikshit's case, that maybe he is in samadhi. Or maybe Chitraketu is just amazed that Lord Shiva is giving a pravachan to brahmacharyas and sannyasis with me on his lap. Right? So is there another possible explanation? Now remember, your assumption may be right, but it's good to test it and also to think if there's other possible explanations. And in general, with devotees, assume good intentions. Now, every now and then there is, a Kali Chela, or what is it, a Dharma Dwaji, right, in our midst, but that's rare. Most devotees have good intentions, or at least are trying to have good intentions, are trying to become anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karmana vritam. They're trying to have good intentions. So these are ways to deal with conflict. So any questions, comments, thoughts on assumptions and how to deal with them? Yes, Vilas Pabana Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance.
You just speak a little louder. It's a little hard
Hare
to hear
Krishna
you.
Prabhuji.
That's better. Better,
Sorry.
yes.
Prabhuji, I wanted to ask that it was very nice explanation about the assumptions you made. So, Prabhuji, in practical aspect, I see that when situations are there, so it becomes very hard to apply these things, and generally I act the way I am practiced or I am accustomed to do. So, are we going to discuss it in future in this session? How to practically apply these from your experiences? And my question is,
Yes, Prabhu. As I said in the beginning, that we'll be dealing a little bit more with theory today and practical tomorrow, although we'll mix both on both days. But yes, it takes practice. It takes some sadhana, as we would say, right? Yet at the same time, if it A is really helpful for our preaching, and B it's very helpful for our devotees sangha and association, it's worth working on it, right? I think I have a slide later that says, you begin with unconscious incompetent. Like, for example, I don't think too many of you this evening for you in India were thinking about assumptions a lot before this presentation, right? It wasn't on your mind. So we weren't even unconscious. We weren't even conscious that we weren't very good at dealing with it. So now we're become a little conscious that we're incompetent. We're conscious that, oh my gosh, I really do make a lot of assumptions. Or when I'm preaching, I'm sometimes not thinking so much about what I wonder what assumptions they're making. So, and then after conscious incompetent becomes conscious competent. You become conscious of it and you work on it and you become good at dealing with all the different things we're going to talk about today. And then finally, the topmost is unconscious competent. It becomes so much a part of your thinking that you don't even have to think about it. You're just really good at it. So those are the 4 stages of many things, like even learning how to drive a car or ride a bicycle. Right now, if for those of us who know how to ride a bicycle, we just get on it, we don't even think about it. But if you think about when you were a child, the first time you got on a bicycle, it was a different experience. So thank you for that, Prabhu. Dave Giridhari, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Guruji, Dandavat Pranam. Guruji, like sometime what we assume like become correct also, like based on some data or facts. And then next time we tend to assume, then we think that like most of time my assumptions are correct also, that maybe this can be also correct. So in that way, like how we can like deal with it, because in mind psychologically we think in this direction that my assumptions can be correct also.
Yes, and they are often correct. I would say probably more than 50% of the time our assumptions are correct. But if we're making some kind, especially some kind of negative thoughts about another devotee, and we want to be careful of Vaishnava Aparad, we may want to, be curious and check on it and see if we're actually accurate than just trusting our mind. Right? I mean, we all know there's so many warnings about the mind in the Shastra, right? Udaret Atmanatmanam, Atmanam, our mind can be our Vipur or our Bandhu or our friend or our enemy. The Avanti Brahmana says, there's no problems in this world. It's not my karma. It's not the demigods. It's not this. The only problem is my mind, right? And in the 6th chapter of the 5th canto, right, that verse number 2, that famous verse about, just never trust your mind. Once you've captured an animal, you should be so careful to not let it out again. So our mind can be tricky, and so yes, you're right. We make an assumption, it's correct, and then we're in a similar situation. We likely make the same assumption, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it's important, when it's about another Vaishnava or about, some aspect of preaching, we might want to be a little curious before we jump to that conclusion. I hope that's okay, Prabhu.
Yes, sorry.
Okay,
And should
thank
we
you. We'll
like
take one.
if your assumptions are correct, like based on like our understanding, maybe that can be negative also.
Yes, that's okay. Yes, yes, your assumptions about somebody's bad qualities may be absolutely correct, but it's just good to make sure before we do anything that could be an aparad. Is that all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The Hari Govinda Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a question regarding this incident, Parvati ji and Chitraketu.
Yes.
So there is two solution: forgiveness and be curious. Let's say assume again. I need to assume Parvati ji didn't assume that situation, and she asked to Chitraketu, why are you laughing at me? But
right.
This won't be case that Chitraketu would be ready to answer that question. Sometimes people don't open up, and in opposite case, if I have some assumption and I'm asking someone why what is the reality, maybe they are not ready to share the reality. So still, even I become curious, or I forgive someone. Still, there is chances of conflict because someone is not open up to share.
And we'll talk about how to ask questions in a way that can encourage them to open up. You're right that people might not open up, but I assume there's another assumption that if Parvati would have said, Chitraketu, are you making fun of my husband? Immediately would say, no, Mataji, no, Hare Krishna. He would know how serious it would be if he offended Lord Shiva. And he would say, "Oh, thank you for asking." No, no, I'm just so amazed that he's so great that he can give a class like that. So, but yes, some people may be shy, and we'll talk about that. Um, I have to find this balance here because you're asking great questions, and there's two more questions, and I want to make sure that we cover all the materials in these 4 hours that we're together. So I'll take these two more, and then we'll move on. Yes, Mataji, Banumati Lakshmi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Pranam. Prabhuji, I have one question that we make assumption in a second, but if we can avoid reacting, then also it will lead to a Vaishnava Aparadh. Because sometimes we make wrong assumption or we take a time to take a decision or to time take to react. But if we can means develop a habit of reacting, but we have think that is wrong, so that will also lead a Vaishnava Aparadh.
Is there a question there? You're right. It can lead to Vaishnava Aparadh, and therefore we should be careful. You know, there's a stimulus, there's something that happens to us in our life or something that we see, and then we can put a pause before we react. And that pause is, you know, is sattvic. It's sattva guna, right? To be thoughtful. Prabhupada once said, a devotee is as thoughtful as a non-devotee is speculative. So we think of Shastra, we think about this point that maybe I'm making an assumption, maybe I shouldn't trust my mind, and let me look into this a bit. Okay, I want to move on, but Dave Giridhari, quickly, go ahead.
Yes, could you just one small question that like if someone making assumptions on us and drawing some conclusion based on that, like their understanding, and if that may not be correct also, in that case, how should we react?
To clarify it, sometimes I would ask permission. I think you're making an assumption about me. Do you mind if I just give you an explanation that could clear things up? And usually by asking that permission, people say, "Oh yes, please do." I've never heard anyone say, "No, I don't want to hear what you have to say." Or we can, if we think somebody's making an assumption about us, we can say something ahead of time, right? Like, let's say I was talking about preaching in India, and you can tell, of course, from my accent and the color of my skin that I'm not from India. But in my introduction, I might say I've lived in India for 21 years, which is true. That because I might be concerned that this person's going to assume I don't know anything about preaching in India because I never lived there. But if in my introduction, I say, I've lived in India for 21 years, then I've addressed that possible assumption. So we can also do that. You know, if we really think, you know, talking to a youth and we say, you know, some people think we're brainwashed. Some people think we send money overseas. Some people think that, you know, that we can't do anything practical in this world. Those are not what ISKCON is all about. So we might address those assumptions ahead of time. I'm not saying we have to, but we might do that if we think that that might be a barrier to this person being interested in Krishna consciousness. Okay, and last one quickly, Sadhu Mati Rohini Mataji. You have your hand up, but I don't see you and don't hear you. Okay, so later we'll move on. Okay, so I have a question for you. Put in the chat, what do you see? What do you see? Put it in the chat. Should I show it again? He's getting angry, toe injury, rejoicing after a win. He's celebrating a win, an angry man. Okay, very good. A few more. Threat to other people. Yes, I won. Calming mood, disagreement, achieve something. Great. Leads people with enthusiasm, creating a win. Very good. So now, let me repeat what was my question. Right? What was my question? My question was, what do you see? And no one said, I see a pointed finger, I see a Nike shirt, a Nike sweatband, lots of muscles, white teeth, a blue and white headband, right? None of you said that. Immediately you said so many things, revenge attitude, teasing others, repenting, celebrating, achieving, making it. Well, someone said making a gesture. Yes, Rajiv, you kind of answered the question that way. Calming mood, a threat to people, etc. Okay, so it's interesting, isn't it? Because my question is, what do you see? So let's talk about this a little bit, because it's very important. So it's not easy to just observe without interpreting. Now, I'm not criticizing anyone who put that there. That is not that it's a bad thing. It's just good to know what we're doing. And it's not easy to just neutrally observe, right? The highest form of intelligence is the ability to observe without evaluating. Now, I know we don't follow Krishnamurti's philosophy, but it's a good point. This is a bit of a joke. You can observe a lot by watching, but that was just a joke. For most of us, it is difficult to make observations, especially of people and their behavior, that are free of judgment, criticism, or other forms of analysis. So it's really helpful to be able to separate these three, right? Simply describing something neutrally, and as we said, that's not easy. Then to be aware of when we're interpreting. So almost all of you were interpreting. Nothing wrong with that. It's just good to be at least aware that's what I'm doing. And I don't think any of you, did evaluating on this one, but if you would have said, meat eating karmi or something like that, that would be evaluating, right? But we do a lot of evaluating based on our observations. Again, nothing wrong with that, but it's good to know which one we're doing. So separating observation and evaluation. Instead of saying Krishna Das procrastinates, it's more accurate to say Krishna Das saves all of his Diwali shopping until the day before Diwali. Or instead of old people are slow drivers, a more specific observation would be, no matter what road he is on, my elderly uncle always drives 15 kilometers below the speed limit. So you see the difference? So let me ask you a question, and someone will have to monitor the chat because I can't see the chat when I'm doing this. But which one of these are just observations? Just observations. There is two that are a little easy and one that's a little tricky. So if someone could just tell me what number comes up in the chat. Go off of mute because I can't see it. Right now, actually, well, maybe I can see the chat, actually, yes. Now I can do it, yeah. So which ones are just observations without interpretation or evaluation? Two. Okay, oh, sorry, you did start. Okay. Vishwarup and Harshit Chaitanya Prabhu. Yes, Vilas, yes. Number two is just an observation. Last night, Radha Dasi knitted a sweater or watching her daughters. Yes, clearly number two. Okay, what else? Number four is someone put, and that's not really accurate because wonderful is a interpretation. Some people may think she's a good artist. Some people may think she's a bad artist. If it just said my mother is an artist, that would be just an observation. Okay, which other one is just an observation? And no problem if you get them wrong. Number 9, yes, Vishwarup Prabhu got the most difficult one. Lalita Dasi told me that red isn't my color. So if someone said, oh, red isn't your color, that would be maybe an interpretation. But just the fact that Lalita said that is okay. Now there's one more. Yes, thank you, Manisha. Number 7. Nitai Das was the last one out the door every day last week. That's just a fact. Every day and the last one. Okay, so you get the idea. So it's helpful to know which one we are doing. And then you see how this is connected to making assumptions. Right. Okay. And then this is an interesting point, that when I talk to you, I know my intention, but I don't know the impact it has on you. And when you talk to me, I know how the impact you have on me, but I can't read your mind. I don't know your intention. So in any communication in this world, we can only be absolutely sure of 50%. Right? So this is important in preaching and in management, because you may have good intentions. You may be an Yabilashita Sunyam when you're doing your service. But it's also important to be able to communicate our good intentions, because even the best intentions can be misunderstood. Right? Have you ever, spoken to a person and you can tell by their body language they don't understand what you're saying? Does that ever happen? Right? It happens to us sometimes. So it's really good to have good intentions, but it's very important, right? It's the definition of Uttama Bhakti in that verse, which is the most important verse, or the Paribhasya Sutra of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But in terms of preaching and even dealing with devotees, sometimes we have to be careful to be able to communicate. Otherwise, people sometimes make the wrong assumptions again. Okay, so it's so important for us in our service to understand this, that it's not just our intentions, but we have to make sure that our intentions match our impact. Because you can have good intentions and a bad result, as you can see here. So now let's talk about other causes of conflicts. There can be conflicts over information, conflicts over resources, over relationships, structures, and even values. How should I do this? Well, first let's go over them briefly. So conflicts over information, a lack of information, or we speculate about information, or we just don't know. We may not know about a GBC or Bureau resolution. We may not know what Prabhupada said about a particular issue. There's also can be conflicts over what information is relevant. Somebody says, well, there's different devotees can argue over what it means to be successful. Is the number of people that come to the temple? Is it the Sankirtan scores? Is it the youth preaching? Is it devotees getting really deepening in their hearing and chanting? We may have this argument over success based on information. There obviously can be conflicts over resources, over money, over devotee engagements, especially when resources are limited. I'm just going through these briefly because we're going to talk more about them. Naturally, there's conflicts over relationships all the time. There can be conflicts over structures, right? Like who has access to power, who has access to resources, how are decisions made, right? We've seen this in the history of ISKCON. Who has the authority? Is it the guru or the temple president? That's a structural issue. Or, some people say, no, we should focus on devotee care. No, we should focus on preaching. So structures can cause conflict, and values can obviously cause conflict, because even though we should base our values on Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, we also base them on our experience, on our culture. And conflicts over values can be most difficult to resolve. And the reactions to this conflict can be defensive. Devotees, it's because challenging our values is like challenging our identity, even if it may be our false identity. Just a quick example of values was when I was helping to manage the Vrindavan temple, and I'm from New York, and I never probably saw a cow in my life until I was a devotee. And I understood theoretically that milk came from a cow, but I really thought milk came from the shop. And so we were talking about the Goshala in Vrindavan, and it was getting crowded. So I said, well, we have to stop breeding the cows, obviously. And then one devotee, another leader in the Vrindavan temple who grew up in a village in Bihar, said, that's sinful. And, so we had this whole debate. What do you mean it's sinful? And so he grew up saying that if you stop a cow from breeding, it's considered sinful. And I was just being practical. There's only so much land. So that was kind of a conflict over values, although maybe not the best example, but I think you get the idea. So can you think of examples from Shastra? For any of these. Examples of conflicts over information, resources, relationships, structures, values from Shastra. I'll give you some that I thought of and then see if you can add some. Okay, you can put it in the chat. I just have to go off a PowerPoint for me because I wrote them down in a Word file. Information. Conflicts over information. Well, we gave that example of the Yamadutas and the Vishnu Dutas, right? They were in conflict over, who's supreme, and the Yamadutas had their orders and the Vishnu Dutas had their orders. So that was kind of a conflict over information. Resources. Well, I was thinking of Priyavrata, Narada Muni and Swayambhuva Manu, kind of like human resources. One of them wanted to rule the world. One of them wanted them to be brahmachari. Or maybe a clear one would be Indra and Krishna, because Indra wanted the yagyas, the sacrifices, the resources from the sacrifices to continue coming to him. And of course, there's so many examples of conflicts in the Shastra about relationships. The one that came to my mind was Drupada and Drona in the Mahabharata, but of course there's so many. Structures cause conflict. You could say perhaps the structure in the Mahabharata about who will be the next king. Should it be just Dhritarashtra, who's older, or Pandu, who has his vision? Right? So, then Pandu became, because you shouldn't have a blind king. And so that structure, that way that culture was set up. Maybe also kind of about culture. Maybe this is more values. I don't know. But, Shiva not standing up when Daksha came. And of course, values, I think there's hundreds of them. Just, anytime practically when there's suras versus asuras. There can be conflicts. So Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni, for which one Abhay Prada? Or Dave Giridhari, Pandava and Kauravas over land. Yes, resources. Yes, very good. Sadmati Rohini Mataji, conflict between Brahma and Prithu Maharaj over Indra stealing the horse. Yeah, okay. Chandavali and Shrimati Radharani, Mataji brought that one up to a very high level. I don't know which one that would be. Would that be values? I don't know. From the Ramayana between Lakshman and Bharat. Yes, but please try to say, thank you. Like, do what Mahabhav did and explain which one it is. So a mantra to Kaikeyi was about information, and it was also you could say resources, because if Kaikeyi is the Queen Mother, Values, Yudhisthira versus Duryodhana, Dhruva Maharaj's stepmother. Structure, very good. Very good. That's a good one. For information, we can take Bhagavad Gita's knowledge of the soul. For resources, the principle of using wealth. Okay. Relationships, Krishna and Arjuna, these are relationships. Yes. Structures, yes. Varnashram. Prithu Maharaj and Indra for resources. Yes. So you see, these are those five categories. I get those from non-devotee sources, but you can see how much we can learn from Shastra, right? So it's yeah. Now let me ask you this. Oops, wrong one. Let me ask you this question. Oh, I keep doing the wrong one. Hare Krishna. See, one of the 4 defects, making mistakes. What are examples of these in your service, in youth preaching, or in in what you see in ISKCON? What are some examples of this in your preaching, or or in youth preaching, or in ISKCON? Any of them? And you can go up a mute also and explain if you like. I can't see you, so you'd have to just go off a mute. Don't wait for me to call on you. You don't have to raise your hand. Like I said, just go off a mute because I can't see you. But I do see that Sarumati Rohini. Mataji. She has her hand up, but
Hare
I
Krishna,
can't hear her.
Prabhuji.
Yes.
Prabhuji, in ISKCON, I see there is a conflict that whether Mataji should be the initiating gurus.
Yeah, so that would be probably a values one. And also structures. Okay. What else? And of course, information, because different people quote Shastra. Mhm. Okay, what else? Examples in youth preaching for any of these?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes,
Sometimes
Prabhu.
the conflicts are related to engaging the students. Where should we engage someone? So I can see it like resources for the
Yes, resources. Manpower is resources. Very
manpower.
good. Yes, very good. Very good example.
Also,
What else?
also,
Oh,
also
I'm
sometimes
sorry, I cut you
related.
off.
Also sometimes related to relationships, like uh, some students are um, in one student is more inspired with other preacher, so that is
Ah,
relationship conflicts happens.
yes. Yes, very good. Very good. Madhav Gora Prabhu put in the chat, who will be the next temple president? Structure. Yes. And it could also be relationships to some extent. And even resources, maybe, because when you're in temple president, you're in control of a lot of resources. So, but yes, structure causes that. So, Madhav Gora Prabhu, the way structure could cause that conflict is, what is the process for choosing the next temple president? Because it can create a lot of politics if the structure is one way, and it could be maybe a very positive experience if the structure is another way. Vaishnava Vats puts, sometimes new devotees hear things from other gurus and get confused. So that would be information. Yes. Thank you. Yes. In the old days, when a new bhakta would join in the 70s, everyone would be telling that poor new bhakta what to do and giving him all different kinds of confusing advice. It was amazing that anyone stayed a devotee sometimes when they moved into the temple. Management takes decision without proper transparency and system. Yes, so that would be structure. Yep, and that sometimes happens. Any others? resources, pulling other devotees' donors. Oh, yes. I once, years and years and years ago, I got a donation uh, from someone in Mumbai for the Gurukul. And actually, I was introduced to him by Devakinandan Prabhu. But I went to see him without telling Devakinandan Prabhu, and oh, he was not happy. Of course, we're very close friends, so we worked it out. But it was, so what to speak of others? Yes. Hearing some rumors about ISKCON, yes. Information, very good example. Lack of clarity whether to take grains prasadam or Ekadasi prasadam on some. Yes, all of those half day, full day fasts. That is often information. It can also even sometimes be values. Well, I'm really pakka. I only take Ekadasi on such and such days. And then someone else has values. Well, I was with Prabhupada and he had a full grain feast on Janmas, so different things. Yes. Good. So it's good to be able, so this has been a little theoretical, but it's good to understand the theory, what causes these things. So I hope this was helpful, just to understand, where do these conflicts come from? And of course they're, Kali Yuga is such a great time for conflicts. Sometimes people ask me, so your main service is dealing with conflicts in ISKCON? Are there that many? And I say, yeah. There's never not going to be conflicts, because in Kali Yuga it's a growth industry, as they say in the corporate world. It's a growth industry. Yeah, Namashraya said, yes, Prabhupada's, and Prabhupada would sometimes say different things at different times, naturally, because he was a preacher, right? Sometimes he would say, don't read any other books but mine, and then other places in the purport he says, you will benefit from reading Brihat Bhagavatamrita and this and that. Or one time he said, no, you cannot wear leather goods, they're the source of violence. Yes, you can go ahead and wear leather goods because you're in a cold area and they'll keep you warm. So he would adjust things according to time, place. Sometimes Shastra says Varnashram is, like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says it's not a part of bhakti. And then Prabhupada would all say, that he had his Varnashram walks in Vrindavan in 1974, talking about the importance of Varnashram. So yes, we can. And sometimes what we do, and I'm sure you've all seen this, is we choose which one of those quotes we like better. Isn't it? You might not, this is not such a thing in India, but in America during the Christmas holidays, often we get these boxes of chocolate when I was a child. And there would be milk chocolate and dark chocolate. And for a child, milk chocolate tastes a lot better. It's more sugar, and dark chocolate is more for adults. So by the end of the day, all the milk chocolate will be gone and the dark chocolate is still there. So I sometimes think we're a little bit like that with Prabhupada quotes sometimes. We pick the ones that taste good to us, and we somehow have a way to kind of ignore or to rationalize the other quotes that are not our favorites. So the idea, of course, is to look at everything Prabhupada said about something and try to understand the principle. In the 6th chapter of Nectar of Devotion, right in the beginning of the 6th chapter, Prabhupada talks about the difference between his details and principles. And I think maybe it wasn't mentioned, but my Diksha Guru is His Grace Burijan Prabhu. I was a bhakta in the temple when Srila Prabhupada left this world. And so I've been initiated 3 times. My first 2 gurus, I had some fall downs. Although one of them is doing wonderful service now in Krishna consciousness. So one time Burijan Prabhu asked Prabhupada, you probably know that you've heard this story, He said, Prabhupada, how do you know the difference between the two? Or actually, no, I think Shrutakirti asked the question, but Burijan Prabhu was in the room. And Prabhupada said the famous thing, that takes some intelligence. To know the difference between a principle and a detail. Okay. Let's move on. Hare Krishna. We have much more to cover. Okay, we covered all those. Okay, so now there are only 5 ways to deal with a conflict. Okay, there's not 6, there's not 4. There are 5 ways to deal with a conflict. And let's learn about those 5. But when we look at this, okay, so let me first ask you a question. We're not going to do a poll here, but think about an ongoing conflict that you have. It could be really small. It could be really big. If you can't think of an ongoing one, then think of one that you've dealt with in the past. But in your mind, before we go over that, in your mind, take 10 or 20 seconds right now to just think of some kind of conflict that you're dealing with now, or at least that happened in the past. Okay? So put that in your brain. I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay? Got it? So now, when you think about that conflict, how you dealt with it in the past or how you're dealing with it now, are you dealing with A, that I tend to do what I can to get the solution or decision I think is best. So yeah, I really know what to do with this conflict and I'm just, I'm going for it. Or B, you tend to avoid the conflict. You just it's on your mind, but you think the best thing is not to deal with this other person or this other devotee. And okay. C, you decide, I should just sit down with this other devotee and we should work out a win-win situation. Let's just kind of get it clear and come up with something that he is happy with and I'm happy with. Or D, I let the other person get what they want. I accommodate, I let them win, so to speak. Or E, I try to come up with half-half, some kind of compromise. I get a little what I want. I don't get everything. He or she gets a little of what they want. They don't get everything. So you don't have to put it in the chat, but just in your mind, consider it if you are A, B, C, D, or E in that situation. Think about that for a second. Someone put in the private chat, I won't mention their name, but they said earlier they were D and now they are E. Okay. And so that can sometimes happen also. You can go from one to the other. And now you have that in your mind. In general, in your life, usually we tend to do 1 or 2 of these. So it may be the same answer as what you just came up with, but what is your nature? Which one or which 2 do you generally do? And think about that for another 20 seconds. Okay, so let's dive into this. So these are the 5. You don't worry too much about the wording, but these are the 5. And horizontally, from uncooperative to cooperative, or attempting to satisfy the other person's concerns, or another way I like to look at it is the further you go to the right horizontally, the more important the relationship is. Okay, and then the vertical, unassertive to assertive, or attempting to satisfy your own concerns, or I'd also like to look at it as the importance of getting the seva done. So the horizontal relationships and vertical getting the work, getting the results. Okay? And the first thing I want to say is that none of these are good and none of these are bad. It all depends on Desha Kalapatra, the time, the place, the situation, the circumstance. Okay? So let's go over each of them briefly. So avoiding. Is avoiding bad or good? It depends. Sometimes avoiding can be good. Have you ever, sometimes at night you're thinking about something, you think, oh, this is a big deal, I have to deal with this. And then in the morning, maybe after you do some sadhana, you think, oh, it's actually not such a big deal. It's not worth getting into it, right? Or sometimes you just wait a while and the problem goes away. So avoiding can be good. Now, what if by avoiding things get worse, right? Or you're a person in charge, let's say you're a temple president, and devotees are complaining to you about another devotee who's being really critical and terrible sadhana, and you don't do anything about it. You bring down the morale of the whole temple, right? By just not being willing to go up to this devotee and correct them. So avoiding, is it good or bad? It depends, right? And I'm sure you could think of some shastric examples of avoiding. Maybe I'll ask you for these later for each of these. So accommodating is when the relationship is very important. Okay? So you let the other person get their way. And that can be fine. Let's say they have a really great idea. Or let's say it's just not so important to you, but it's really important to them. And so you let them do that. You wanted to offer Artik to Prabhupada and Guru Puja, but somebody, had just come from, another a temple that has, hundreds and hundreds of devotees at the morning program, and so they never got a chance, and so they really want to offer the arti. So you say, sure, you can offer it, no problem, right? Or I was in Mayapur last year, and I met a devotee that I went on Sankirtan with 45 years ago. And I hadn't seen him in 45 years. It was so nice to see him. And I was on my way to get some really nice Bengali prasad. I was really looking forward to the shukta and what to speak of the misti dahi, etc. But he really was, he said he heard all these good things about the pizzeria, the pizza place above Govinda's. So he really wanted to go there. So I said, oh yeah, we'll go to the pizza place, because spending time with him and talking to him and getting his sangha was much more important to me than the shukta. So I accommodated. But accommodating can also be bad. Sometimes leaders just want everyone to like them. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And so they let everyone do whatever they want, but that leads to chaos in the temple or in the department or something. Or what if a person has a bad idea, but you just go along with it anyway because they really think it's great. So accommodating, is it good? Is it bad? It depends. But it's one way to deal with a conflict. You let the other person get their way. So you could say, in one sense, the opposite of that is competing. I'm the leader. I'm making the decision, boss. My way or the highway. But it doesn't have to be, that sounds negative, but I'm the leader. I have a really good idea. I have a vision of what to do. Or maybe I don't even have time to consult a lot of people. We're gonna do this. And that's fine. What if you are a brilliant leader? I mean, to use a corporate example, Steve Jobs was not a very nice person in a lot of ways. He wasn't very friendly with the employees at Apple. but he was a visionary, and he did, said we're going this way, and he had a lot of success. So competing, can it be good? Yes. It can also be bad if people in this mode sometimes don't consult with others, don't get other ideas, or people don't like them, and therefore the morale is low. Let's say a temple president has a very good vision for preaching, but nobody likes him. So, competing, is it good or is it bad? It depends. It can be both. So now let's look at the last two. And to the last two, we have to tell the story of the orange. So there's one orange left in the house, and the brother and the sister are fighting over that last orange. So mother comes in and sees them fighting. And what does she do? Naturally, she cuts it in half and says, stop fighting, stop this nonsense. You get half, finish, bas. Go do your homework or whatever, right? But what if the mother would have asked, why do you want the orange? And if the son said, I'm starting to get a little sick, I thought it would be helpful to get the vitamin C. So I need the juice. And the daughter said, oh, well, that's interesting. I don't need the juice. I need the peel, the outside of the orange, because I was going to put that into little pieces and put it into a cake mix and bake a cake. So if the mother would have asked, why do you want the orange? Instead of cutting it in half, they each could have gotten 100%. Okay? So this is a very important concept in conflict resolution, that there's a difference between positions, what we say we want or we demand, and that's what you see, the top of the iceberg, or the interests, why we want it, why we want to do this, right? And often if you ask why a few times, you often get down to some of these real basic things like fairness or following Prabhupada or having your service respected, right? Or a sense of belonging. Often it comes to that. So the position is, I want the orange, I want the orange. The interest is, I'm catching a cold, or I'm getting sick, and I want to make a cake. Mhm. So for every position, there are interests. And when you fight over positions, you can't really come up with a win-win solution. But when you can understand people's interests, then you can come up with a solution. So this we're going to talk about a lot over the rest of today and tomorrow, because this is so important. I just saved you 25 lakhs because I spent about 25 lakhs on getting my my postgraduate degree in conflict resolution. This is one of the main things you learn for that 25 lakhs. Of course, you learn more, but this is such an important concept, because when you find out the reasons, then you can appreciate the other person. You can talk about, well, is there a way that we can get both of our needs met, both of our interests met, right? So how does this apply to the last two? Oh, well, okay, before we talk about, so here, remember we said the interest is what's underneath the iceberg. And I listed some interests here. Here are a few more. Devotees want to be, feel that they're cared for by their guru, by other devotees, respected. Of course, we say amanina, manidena, but, in general terms, some appreciation, you could say, some trust. Trust, of course, is a huge thing. Some affection, which is like care, appreciation, facility to do good sadhana is usually an interest for many of us. Encouragement, harmony, peaceful life, mode of goodness, association and guidance from senior devotees, right? So these are some, I made a mistake here on the, yeah. So these are some of the interests. So now let's talk about these last two. So collaborating is when you ask, why do you want the orange? Hmm? Why is it important for you to have this area to do your youth preaching? All right. What's important to you in this conflict with this other youth preacher? All right. So sitting down and discussing things respectfully in a win-win way. I want to get my needs met, but I also want to meet your needs. All right. So win-win, and that's collaborating. And naturally, that's a good thing, and that's my service in ISKCON is to train devotees to be collaborative and work out their differences in a Vaishnava way, by sitting down respectfully with another devotee and working things out. Okay? But collaboration also isn't perfect. It takes time, and sometimes there isn't time. Or sometimes the issue just isn't about collaboration. They just have to make a decision. Right? It's not, it's so minor that why should we sit down? We can just work it out. And then compromise was like cutting the orange in half. It can be quick, right? Somebody comes to the head pujari and says, "Oh, Prabhu, I really want to offer the arti to Gaur Nitai on Janmashtami." And then the other person says, "No, I want to offer." And so head pujari just says, "Okay, this year you offer, next year you offer, finish, bus." So compromises can be quick, and they can settle matters, and they can be really good. Now, what if compromise can also be the worst idea? For example, let's say some devotees want to build a new temple, and they say it'll cost 100 crore. Okay? Another person says, no, we don't need a new temple. The focus should be on making devotees and book distribution. We don't want to get into all those extra expenses and getting more pujaris and all that. And somebody says, let's compromise. Let's build a temple, but only for 50 crore. So that might be the worst of the three options, because you might have a half-built temple, right? So compromise can be good. It can be not so good. It depends. So these are the 5 choices. There's not really a 6th choice. And I have many people who print out this slide in managers, and they have it with them because it only takes a minute or two to go in any situation to consider these 5 and think which likely is the best approach in this particular conflict. Because none of them are bad, none of them are good. It depends on the Desha Kalapatra. So if we look back at the first exercise that we did in these 5, the first one was compete, right? I tend to do what I think is right. The second one was avoid. I just kind of, put it off because I don't want to get into it. The third one was collaborate, come up with a solution satisfactory to everyone. The fourth one was accommodate, let the other person get their way. And E was compromise. So it's good for us to know which one is our default, which is the one that we usually use in our life, or which 2. And then to remember there's actually 5. And so even though we may be used to doing one way of dealing with the conflict, we should consider all of them, because maybe the one that we're not used to doing is the best one in this situation. And then you choose one of the strategies. Okay, so hopefully there are some questions, comments, thoughts on this very important concept of how to deal with conflicts. Yes, Vilas Pamana Prabhu. You're off mute, but we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. But I'm sure you're saying something really smart. Krishna, Krishna. Now you're on mute. Now we definitely can't hear you. Oh, we can barely hear you now. Could you speak loud or fix something? Okay.
Remove earphone, Prabhuji. Remove earphones
Yeah,
directly from
sometimes the
phone.
earphones do it. But you're on mute now, Vilas. And then while he's working on other questions, comments, thoughts? Oh, okay, Vilas is typing. Okay. While we're waiting for him to type okay, well, while we're waiting, yes, Dave Giri Hariprabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just like you mentioned about these 5 approaches to deal with conflict, just wanted to understand. Obviously, it will depend on time, place, circumstance. But if you can share some points, like which approach will be beneficial, so we should have these points in our mind before going with that approach.
It really does depend, Prabhu. Collaboration obviously is the one that we have sometimes the least expertise in, because it takes some expertise to do that. But they're all good in certain circumstances. Maybe collaborate win-win is a good thing to keep in our mind, because we don't always think that way. Some of us really think, I'm right, he's wrong, finish, bus, right? Or some of us say, I don't like conflict, I can't deal with it. You do whatever you want, right? So it takes some humility, it takes some maturity to really think win-win, to really think, I'm only going to be satisfied when I'm happy and you're happy. That takes, that's not so easy to conclude. We're very convinced about our understanding of a situation, our understanding of Shastra, and sometimes we're not so open to hear other people. And so let's see if we have time today, but we're going to talk a lot about, preaching, youth preaching, and the importance of being a good listener. So it's a great question, Dave Giri Hariprabhu. So I only am saying collaborate because it's something that is harder to do. It's easy to give in, right? That's easy. It's also easy if you're the leader to just say, this is the way we're doing it, boss. It's kind of easy to avoid, right? Even compromise is pretty easy, just cut it in half. But to sit down with another Vaishnava and work out our differences, that takes some effort. I hope that answers your question.
Yes,
So Vilas Prabhu says, I want to ask, is there any clue from your experience to choose the different approaches? No, but I find if you just go through those 5 in your head in a situation, Krishna often will give you the intelligence, the Dami Buddhi Yogam Tvam, which one will work. And maybe you try one and it doesn't work, and then you try another. That's also possible. But this conflict resolution is dealing with people, and you're preachers, and we know when you're dealing with another person, there's not an exact formula to make someone a devotee. Some people have problems with their families. Some people have problems just with their minds. Some people are uncertain what to do, join a base or join the ashram. There's so many things that, and each person is a little different. So we do need to, and we saw with Prabhupada, he was such an expert adjuster of time, place, and circumstance. So expert. You know, you've ever seen that interview, that time when someone is saying, Prabhupada is sitting on a very low, he's speaking to reporters, and he's not sitting on the Vyasasan that the devotees provided. He's sitting just on a mat. And a person's asking you, well, how many cars do you have? And, how much, I heard your devotees only get 6 hours sleep. How much sleep do you get? And Prabhupada answers some of the questions, but he says, I'm sitting down here because I know you're envious. So I sit up there, then that'll increase your envy. So I'm sitting down here. So he was so expert at time, place, and circumstance. So different approaches, different shloks for different folks, as they say. Anything else on this? So please keep this in mind as we go through the rest of this training. Dave Giridhar said, also, Pring, what is that? Many times, Prabhuji, many times we choose approach based on which one will satisfy my ego, yes. Or which is more comfortable, which is more easy, but we have to remember Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, if something makes me unhappy, but my dear Lord gives you pleasure, then that's my greatest pleasure. And if something gives me pleasure but doesn't give you pleasure, then that's my greatest displeasure. So we don't judge things according to satisfying our ego. We should judge things according to our seva. But you're right, Dave Giridhari, that's not always easy to do. Madhav Gaur Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Bhujam, am I audible?
Yeah, Pakka.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Uji. It's a nice lesson we have learned today regarding the 5 strategies. My question is that it's not so easy to dealing with in the conflicts. Many times devotees are not honest. They pretend they're different interests, but they have different interests. They are not Anna Abhilasha Sunyam, or they are cheating. And we assume that they are doing right. So how to deal in this? Is there some strategy for that, or how to deal in that situation, Prabhuji?
We try to appeal to their good side, because they're not 100% bad, right? Is that right, Madhav Gorpru?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Usually they're mishra, they're mixed, right? Like Mishra Bhakti, right? So we try to appeal. So I'll give you some Mahavakyas. So, for example, one Mahavakya is, Prabhu, help me understand why this is important to you. A question like that sometimes brings out their sincerity and, their honesty. Just trying to get to underneath the iceberg. You really have a strong opinion about this. You're really, why is this important? So you're getting beyond sometimes that just I'm fighting. At the same time, we're not. I think what you're saying, Madhav Gorpurbu, is we have to be careful not to be naive, right? Like when Prabhupada saw, especially like in Vrindavan, when it was devotees from the West who were building the Gurukul building, and Prabhupada knew that they were being cheated. They were mixing Jamuna sand sometimes with the concrete, for example, right? And Prabhupada would say, "I'm a Calcutta boy. I'm wise. I know how to deal with this world." So Prabhupada was, or what to speak of in Mumbai, right? In Bombay, dealing with Mr. Nair. Prabhupada was so expert. Yeah. So we can simultaneously not be naive and try to appeal to the devotee's higher self. So it's a combination of those. But yeah, we don't be naive because it's people have mixed motives often until then you quoted Anyabilashita Sunyam. But if we could find that, Vaisheshika Guru talks about that fan the spark, right, in book distribution. So if we can find that purity, that sincere desire to serve and try to fan that, that can be helpful. And of course, also setting example is so important, right?
Yes.
I mean that's that saying, what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying, right? Because our achar should be. I always get confused on how to pronounce that because I also like achar with kitri. So I'm sure there's pronounced a little bit differently. But yeah, it's if we're not naive and looking for their best, trying to fan their sincerity and being as pure as we can ourselves, that can help. But I want to make it clear that all of these things, there's not 100% success. It is Kali Yuga. In our mediations in ISKCON, we have about 70% success. About 70% of the mediations end with a full agreement. But that means 30% don't. I hope that's okay, Manav Kaur Prabhu.
Yes, really.
In the
Thank you very
chat,
much.
yeah. When we should be assertive and stand firmly for a spiritual principle, how do we distinguish between genuine humility and simply avoiding? Those are two different questions. Well, in principles, we're firm, right? Especially in our own life, in our own practice of Krishna consciousness. But we also, the challenge is, what is a principle and what is a detail? And that takes some experience, that takes some intelligence, as Prabhupada said. And sometimes a conflict is a person's looking at something and thinking, this is a detail. Another person saying, no, this is a principle. Right? And that can cause conflict. So when should we be assertive and stand firmly? Another example we learned from Shastra, from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, I can't remember which chapter it is, of Nectar Devotion. But when Prabhupada says that you hear somebody blaspheming Krishna or Krishna's devotee, and he gives three choices, right? Leave the place, defeat them, or what was it? Cut out their tongue? Was it? Something like that. We try to avoid the cutting out the tongue program. That wouldn't make very good headlines on the Times of India or Hindustan Times or whatever. But we are firm when people are doing that. I mean, at least Shastra tells us. But that takes also. But what I often do is I try to make sure that the other person is really as bad as they seem to be. And again, I ask questions like, well, help me understand why this is important to me. Tell me more about why you think Lord Shiva is also supreme, or whatever, whatever the topic is. So I before I make a complete conclusion and I have to be assertive, I want to make sure I'm right. How do we distinguish between genuine humility and simply avoiding conflict? By figuring out which is likely to have the most success in dealing with the conflict, right? So if sometimes, hey, I'm the youth leader here in this temple, and I've tried these other things, it didn't work. This person, no, you cannot. You have to join another department because you have fried out so many youth leaders. You messed up our relationship with the university. I tried to correct you 3 times. It didn't work. I'm sorry. You have to find another service, right? Because that's that's sometimes we have to do. But I think we can if we're honest with ourselves, we can distinguish between what is Vaishnava humility and what is this is a selfish thing that I just don't like conflicts. And even though I should be assertive in this situation, I'm not being because of my personal happiness instead of my service. Because humility means to do, was Arjuna not being humble when he was shooting arrows at everybody? Right? Okay, so great question though. Great question. Most of the time we have to compromise and tolerate to avoid conflicts. Well, tolerate is either avoiding or accommodating. Compromise is when you get some of what you want and the other person gets some of what you want, but you don't get everything you want and they don't get everything they want. So you cut the orange in half instead of finding out that actually you have different needs that both can be satisfied. How to know whether we should compromise, accommodate, or collaborate? You have to look at the situation. Now, what we'll do tomorrow, all of you are asking similar questions about how to apply, okay? So I want as many of you as possible to come with a situation. You don't have to mention names, but some kind of situation, especially that you're dealing with or that you've dealt with in the past, or maybe you've seen a friend of yours deal with, because the answer to your IYF Ghaziabad, I don't have your name, where it says, how do we know whether we should compromise, accommodate, or collaborate? Let's talk about some real life examples and go through these 5 so we can actually apply it. Because I don't want this to just be theoretical. I want this to be so that you can really apply this by after tomorrow in your service. How not to be judgmental or make assumptions. To be curious, that's what we said already, right? To be curious and to be aware of what we're doing. And our judgment may be 100% right. But we still want to sometimes confirm it. Sometimes people develop revengeful attitudes after compromise. Yes, that's possible. So then sometimes you have to sit down again and figure out, okay, what's the next approach to this? All right, I want to just leave you with one more thing. So I just want you to think about this. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. But let me see if I can find it. I'm going to do all this tomorrow. But I just want to read you a quote from Prabhupada. This is about college preaching. This is about youth preaching, but in 1972 in the USA. So it may be a little different, but listen to this. Prabhupada says, this is about university students, college students. Now I want that we should recruit more and more our men among the intelligent class of men. They, because they are little educated or they have some wealth or fame or ability, so they will sometimes be little puffed up. But that's all right, they deserve it. So Prabhupada's saying, yes, if they're going to a university like an IIT or IIM or something, they're probably pretty smart. That's okay, that's their karma, they deserve it. Now we shall have to learn the art, how to approach such higher class of men and attract them to apply themselves to this Krishna consciousness. That requires much tact, intelligence, and we shall have to expect to meet all challenges by sharp minds. Now listen to this. But if we remain always absorbed in remembering Lord Chaitanya, how he converted so many intelligent men, even sitting for 7 days and nights to hear them speak without himself speaking anything. And if we remember how Krishna was so patient to explain everything to Arjuna, even Arjuna was speaking like a fool. In this way, being always tolerant of others, and listen to this, appreciating their points of view, it will be easy matter for us to convince them gradually to join us. So imagine the Supreme Personality of Godhead sitting for 7 days without saying anything. And he was successful in converting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So appreciating their points of views. In 1972, I can tell you, university students in America, their points of view was drugs, sex, rock and roll, and Mayavad philosophy. I don't know what the points of view are for youth today in India. I would assume some of them are about cricket, or maybe the what is it, the cockroach Jayanta party, maybe, or sex, of course, or whatever. But probably it was, appreciate their point of view and listen to them, because sometimes we think preaching is all about what we tell people, but so much of it is listening. And we're going to talk about this tomorrow. We'll start with this, but I just wanted to plant this very important quote on youth preaching that Prabhupada said in 1972, which is 54 years ago, and see how it applies to our preaching today. So one thing I learned, and I'm sure you all know this from being preachers and giving Bhagavatam classes, nobody is upset when the class ends a little early. Many are upset when the class goes too late, especially if you're competing with breakfast prasadam. So let us end 2 minutes early. And I very much look forward to
Hare
seeing
Krishna.
you in 22 hours from now.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes,
Prabhuji, am I audible?
yes.
Yes, please. So, Prabhuji, on behalf of His Grace Sundar Gopal Prabhuji, I want to thank you, and on behalf of all the devotees, I want to thank you for such a materially also speaking that exclusive course. You also taught us many ways of dealing with the conflicts and practical examples. And tomorrow, I'm very excited to learn more about the practical situations. So very grateful, Prabhuji, for today's session. We are very
Thank
thankful.
you. Yeah, Prabhu's, I don't know if you got if you were sent both homeworks, but you should have already read. But if you haven't, read today. There was 4 pages of Prabhupada quotes about conflict. And I also sent a link to a video of Brahmatirtha Prabhu. It's about 40 minutes. It starts at 4 minutes and goes to 46 minutes. And it's Brahmatirtha Prabhu, who met Prabhupada in 1971. He was the person, perfect questions, perfect answers. He was Bob Cohen, who was speaking with Prabhupada. And he's speaking for 40 minutes about how Prabhupada dealt with conflicts. So it would be great if you could do both of those homeworks by tomorrow. I know you have a busy life, but if you could take the 40 minutes to listen to that video, you can even put it on 1.25 speed if you need to save time. And also read those quotes from Srila Prabhupada. Okay?
Sure, Prabhuji.
Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you so much for being so attentive today. Srila
And all the
Prabhupada
devotees,
Jai.
please join tomorrow 4 p.m.
Yes, no, and Pakka 4 p.m., not IST, not Indian stretchable time. Be on time, Pakka.
We
Hare
were
Krishna.
very late. This was today. We were very late. Only few devotees joined on time. So
Yes.
request that at least tomorrow, last day of the session. So kindly join before 5 minutes. That will be appreciated. Thank you. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you,
Srila
Vilas
Prabhupada ki
Pamanam.
jai.
Haribol. Hare Krishna.